is sponsored by the Faculties of Management and Computer Science. So the title of my presentation today is Digital Transformation and Data-Driven Product Development Using Social Technologies to Drive Competitive Advantage. And what I'll be looking at today is how digital transformation is fundamentally reshaping how we innovate in product development. So specifically, we'll be exploring the ways in which organizations, small startups to large multinational organizations, are designing, they're building and selling products, and trying to understand this significant shift in digital transformation. So, there's a technical difficulty. Okay, good morning everybody. Let's start again. Buenos dias. My name is Richard Evans. I work at Dalhousie University, Professor of Digital Innovation and the Co-Director of the College of Digital Transformation. Okay, in today's talk today, I'm going to briefly introduce myself, but then we'll look at why the world of product development is fundamentally changing, how social technologies are creating value through co-creation and absorptive capacity, strategic choices, contracts, and common pitfalls, and then what I'd like to do, which for a lot of you in the audience will be important, some future directions for research. So if you work in the university and you're thinking about submitting a publication to one of the IEEE Technology and Engineering Management publications, look at some of those avenues for future research in this space of digital transformation in product development. And then what I'd like to do is draw some conclusions and key takeaways. So, I have a bachelor's degree in computing and information technologies, then a master's degree in e-commerce. I work for one of the world's, or one of the UK's largest home furnishings organisations, Dunelm Mill, and my PhD afterwards was sponsored by BAE Systems, where I focused on knowledge management for collaborative product development. As Eduardo kindly said, before moving to Dalhousie, I worked at Brunel University in London, where I led the BSc Product Design degree. And I've held various different positions, and I'm very thankful to CESAR and the organising committee for inviting me today to deliver this speech to all of you. So, from a research background point of view, I always like to show this slide because it shows where I've come from, so where is my research background, what communities I like to contribute to, then what are some of my research interests, and then where is the practical application, the research domain which I apply this empirical research to. So I started, as I mentioned, with a degree in computing, but I've transitioned then to a management faculty and now digital transformation, where at Dalhousie we focus on the human-centered side of digital transformation. And with any digital transformation projects, you can have what we call the technical digital transformation, but for us, very important, the people-centered side of digital transformation. How people interact with the new tools, but in organizations looking at the management, from change management to the leadership and the empowerment of people and the training of people to be able to use these new technologies. And I look at this from three different avenues. I look at it from a knowledge management point of view. With my PhD with BAE Systems, I've also worked with Ford Motor Company and Cummins Power Generation, developing new knowledge management systems that aid dispersed product development teams around the world communicate with each other, record lessons learned, and share them to improve their competitive advantage. I also work in the medical sector, the healthcare sector, where I'm working at the minute. We've got a large project at Dalhousie, which is developing a national stroke registry across Canada. And we are trying to record lessons learned to reduce the time it takes for a person who is experiencing a stroke to receive the needle. So door to needle time, we're trying to reduce that, and we're recording that in a lessons learned registry and providing that to medical centres across Canada. And that's funded by the National Research Council of Canada, and it's a large $1.5 million grant. Now, when it comes to traditional product development has had some challenges. In a minute, I'll show you how we're transitioning through the Industry 4 revolution into Industry 5 revolution. But if we look at traditional product development, we have three core functions. We have marketing, design, and manufacturing. And product development has traditionally been a linear process. It's been a stage gate process. And this has been like it for many, many, many years. And we've got different stages we do. We go from planning, we look at conceptualization, how we gain ideas for new products. We then go to concept development. We may engage in activities like rapid prototyping when we've engaged with the customer to understand their needs, their wants, their desires. We then can go to system level design, to detailed design, to testing, manufacture, and so forth. If it's a physical product, so obviously you have the manufacture. If it's development of a digital product, you go a different way. But historically, with traditional product development, whether it be a physical product or whether it be a digital product, like a software application, then we will have these stage gate processes. But at the heart of it is a very interdisciplinary team. We have the design, we have marketing, and we have manufacturing. Okay? And this, different sectors or different parts of the organization will interact with this, but at the heart of it, we have these three core functions. Okay. Now, within that, we have a core team. We have a core team within a product development, where at the center we may have a team leader. So when I worked in e-commerce, I worked as an online product manager. But my job wasn't just to manage a product, but it was to communicate, to collaborate, and innovate with various different functions within the organization. So a team leader for a product development project can involve multiple different people. And on the slide here, we can see a variety of these, from manufacturing engineer, purchasing specialist, electronic designer, mechanical. We have all of these different core team elements within a traditional product development space. And then on the outside ring, we've got the extended team. So again, within product development, we will have a supply chain, we may have multi-tier supply chain, but all of these have to harmoniously interact together so that we can successfully deliver a project to the customer. Now, over time, over the last 70 years, we've really seen a digital transformation. And we had slow industrial revolutions at the beginning. So we started with the first industrial revolution, the second industrial revolution, but it wasn't until 70, 90 years ago when we started to see that digital transformation be extended into the product development space. So we saw the use of electronics, information technology, and automated production. But nowadays, we've transitioned to Industry 4, which all of us will know. But now we're transitioning to Industry 5, so bringing back in the human element to product development. So during this conference, we will no doubt learn about all of these different advanced enabling technologies, but we have artificial intelligence with generative AI, we have cloud computing, factories of the future, all of these new technologies which are enabling organizations to develop products quicker, more innovatively, and looking at how processes, how people are managed, how products are developed using better innovation. And this is really important as we transition. But, as I said at the beginning, there's two sides to this digital transformation journey. You've got the technical side of digital transformation, which some people say is much easier than the human-centered side. The technical side, people can very easily subscribe or pay a license fee to have the latest, for example, product lifecycle management system. You may use PTC Winchell. You can very easily purchase a license for that. But it's the people-centered side of this digital transformation and the revolution where we're trying to think, how do we develop our people? How do we empower them? How do we now encourage that use of technology, especially as we have become, over the last 70 years, much more globalized? Okay? I work with companies in Canada where they are medium-sized companies with 100, 200 people, and their product life cycle is extended over multiple sites in Canada, but extended over the world. And so they may design in Nova Scotia, but the manufacturing is all done in China, and then it's returned. So trying to communicate, trying to collaborate between international boundaries is a specific challenge. And then how do you integrate any design changes? How do you record any lessons learned when you've got different cultures, different leadership styles. This all relates to the human-centered side of digital transformation in product development. Now, through this, we've got lots of different disruptive technologies. And as I mentioned, we've got the technical side. These disruptive technologies, there is a huge amount of them. We see it now with, I'll give you an example. We see it now with generative AI and ChatGPT and Google Gemini, lots of large language models. One of the challenges with that is that companies are now trying to integrate them into their processes, into their organizations. But we have, again, from the people-centered side, we have intellectual property issues to do with transparency, but we have what we call algorithm aversion too. We have people who may be averse to receiving information or guidance from these systems. And takeaway one, there is a growing body of literature in the algorithm aversion space where people are learning how do we trust what the AI and what the large language model is delivering to us. That's just one example, and one which is very relevant at the minute. But we're seeing all of we're seeing all of these issues. We're seeing flexible working, especially after COVID, where we're seeing people going remote or they're going hybrid, and that's creating challenges. People are wanting greater flexibility in how they work. But we're also seeing reduced communication barriers. There are benefits to these. Some of these new technologies, they are encouraging us, they're enabling us to be able to communicate with partners across the product lifecycle. We're seeing with Microsoft Teams, you have the use of subtitles and live translation. You have virtual reality and augmented reality headsets, which will again have live translation and allow people to communicate across boundaries. And these are all very good enabling technologies which is allowing product development to really thrive in the digital economy. But we're also seeing new business models. We're seeing the platform economy. We're seeing the likes of Apple, for example, developing large platforms where applications run on them, and people are having to develop alliances with other partners on these platforms. And that's creating an innovative space, one which can lead to competitive advantage for the firm. But it's creating challenges. How do you know who to work with? How do you know what data to share with that person? Do you have the same types of cultures between your partners? All of these are big challenges, but it creates major opportunities. And there's various technologies. On the slide here, we can see on the left-hand side in an assembly line. This is at Cummins power generation, and you have a traditional assembly line with maybe 7 stages of development. And on the left, we have pick-by-light. Now, pick-by-light technology is quite common now, but it speeds up. In the assembly line, somebody will have work instructions, and the work instructions will tell the assembly line operative, it will say, take this part, put it into the product. And you may have a list, you may have a huge amount of different parts, and this pick-by-light technology enables you to identify very quickly, through light, which part you need to pick. Now you also have virtual reality, and we've had discussions on the metaverse with virtual world. This is a technology which has been around for 50 years. BAE Systems 50 years ago, 40 years ago, were looking at the use of virtual reality, and I remember 20 years ago using Second Life. If any of you remember Second Life back in the early 2000s, Second Life was a virtual world where you created an avatar. BAE Systems were using that 20 years ago to train their graduate employees before letting them onto the manufacturing shop floor. So they asked graduates to create avatars, and they created a digital twin of the manufacturing shop floor and enabled graduates to train using that system. Very innovative. That was 20 years ago. Where are we now? That's for the people in this room at the conference to lead the way in. Now we see the metaverse and virtual worlds, and we're bringing that together from a 2D virtual world interface into 3D and 4D, where we're able to experience it much more immersively. Okay, so that's important. But on the right-hand side, what I'll be talking about, the social technologies, that's where we see open innovation, and we see the likes of crowdsourcing come into play. So one of the biggest success stories in product development when it comes to social product development is Lego Ideas. Now, Lego Ideas is a crowdsourcing platform which allows people around the world to submit new ideas for Lego products. And out of that space, we see lots of successful products. We've seen the Titanic Lego, we've seen the Globe Lego, we've seen all of these. And using gamification, so using metrics to understand which are users' preferences, we're able to identify what are some of the new ideas which potentially would be welcomed by the market. Now, one of the key things is we must deliver what our customers want. So we must think, okay, what are the gains? And here we can see required gains, expected gains, desired gains, and unexpected gains. And if you work in a product development space, you will have heard of the Kano model, and this is very similar. So if we deliver something which is required, it is, if you purchase a television, you expect to be able to see the picture on that television. You expect to be able to hear the volume and the sound coming from that television. But the expected gains, you expect to have a remote to be able to easily control it, not have to go to the TV and press a button. But now we have these desired gains where you may have a desire to have 100 TV channels. But now we have these unexpected gains which are coming into play, where we have, in Canada, we have Bell, in other countries you have different television providers, but we have unexpected. Netflix is a very good example of this, where Netflix allows you to watch on your mobile phone while you are commuting on the train or on the bus. You stop the button and then you can go in the house and resume playing that TV or that movie in your house. So you can go device to device to device. And that's an unexpected gain. And that's something which we need to be looking at. Okay. But we also need to be thinking, why is it failing? And we've gone through different generations of innovation. Okay? We've had market pull, we've had push, and we're thinking, well, do we have, in the 1950s, we had a mentality of all of the greatest ideas for new products come from internal, and it comes from internal. Then we had the market push, and we had marketing departments engaging with customers, with end users to understand their requirements, their desires, their needs. And this is where we are very much going into the coupling approach. And the coupling approach, what we mean by that in product innovation, is that we have both an intra-innovation, where we have internal to the organization, and we have the ontra, okay? And that's where we are working with the external collaboration. And the external collaboration is where we have seen, again, a field which has really grown, is open innovation. So closed innovation to open innovation, where back in the early 2000s, companies started to recognize that, like I said, not all of the good ideas, not all of them come from the internal experts, those who have graduated with maybe a design and manufacturing and engineering degree, but it also comes from listening to your customer. And listening to your customer, we now have these social technologies which allow us to do that more. And in a short moment's time, I'll talk about that. But one of the key ways, so I could talk to you about various different technologies. I could talk about the metaverse, I could talk about artificial intelligence, but one of the key main ways at the minute is the social media capability. So this is firms or organizations' ability to select, to use, and leverage internal and external social media technologies to execute business activities. And this is a capability which all organizations possess, but again, there's a people-centered side to it. You've got to be trained how to use it, but also you've got to have the technical capability to be able to scrape the data from these social media technologies to understand customer needs, but then you've got to have the ability to analyze this data and to transform it and to exploit it as a new product. Now there's three pillars to social media capability. We've got mindful planning, which is choosing the correct platforms to engage with, the goals of using that platform. We've got active management, so thinking about how we manage the corporate policy for using those platforms. And then we've got how do we scrape that data, how do we analyze it, how do we interpret it, and how do we transform it into exploited knowledge so that we can turn it into a new product innovation. Now, as I mentioned, there's two forms of co-creation. And when we look at social media capability, we can think that we've got the intra-co-creation, so the internal ways in which those interdisciplinary teams, how they collaborate with each other, how they share their knowledge, and how they develop these products across international geographical boundaries. And we have various tools for these. Okay, very simply, we can see Microsoft Teams, but we have Slack, we have PLM systems, like product lifecycle management systems, which enable companies to develop across these interdisciplinary teams. Now, the goal of that is to break down internal silos, but most importantly, to connect employees and teams across functions to share knowledge. And from a product development point of view, that becomes extremely important when it brings people together to share this knowledge. But then also importantly, and that's where we focus more on the open innovation side, or what we call social product development, that's where we have tools such as public social media platforms like Twitter or X, which you can scrape using Python. We have Facebook, we have Instagram and Snapchat. All of these are opportunities for companies to scrape and listen to the customer to understand their unexpected, their desired needs, and what they require from product. And this is where we have this digital transformation really happening, and we can talk about other types of technology, but social media is one where there's a huge amount of data which can be scraped and captured and analysed to really help in the product development process to make organisations more competitive. Okay, and then one of the key ways is mechanism one. So looking at building a social capital in the crowd. So thinking about crowdsourcing. I mentioned Lego Ideas. Lego Ideas is just one platform where companies are using that, but we have Kickstarter, the new one, and we have various other different crowdsourcing platforms. Again, these are technologies which require the human involvement, the people involvement, and we have, for example, when it comes to research, we need to think about three different actors in a crowdsourcing. We need to think about the platform owner. The platform owner is Lego Ideas or Kickstarter. It is the owner of the platform who develops the features for this platform to run successfully. We have the idea requester. We have the person who is requesting a solution to a problem which they need. And then we have the contributor. We have the person, the idea contributors. And these need to work harmoniously together, and they need to be motivating each other. So the platform owner needs to think to themselves, what features can I introduce into my crowdsourcing platform to enable the people seeking ideas, so the knowledge seeker, what features do I need to do to be able to allow them to explain what knowledge they need, but also from the contributor, the knowledge contributor point of view, you need to motivate them. And research shows that it's not always monetary. Okay, a lot of people think throw money at it. It's not the money, but it's the camaraderie in these platforms. It's the sociability of these platforms. And a lot of research has proven that it's things like the gamification route, where you can have a rating, okay, rating or thumbs up, and using that gamification increases engagement over monetary value. Now, we also have a paradox though. We have a paradox where a lot of people believe, or there's a common belief, that the more ideas from the crowd, the better chances there are of finding a winner. Now, this may be the case for a company who has a large marketing department, a large data analysis department, who is able to scrape these large amounts of data and analyze it. But you put this into a small SME with 100 people, and that's going to take a lot of manpower, a lot of human resources, a lot of money to pay for the licensing of this software, which allows you to scrape this data. So you need to think about other ways, and that's why I think technology management is important, because you bring in the design element, you bring in the design thinking methods and so forth, to really understand who your customer is. But we do see an inverted U, where we have idea quality and submission rate of those top knowledge contributors. They eventually decline after they reach a certain point. And that may be the motivation from the rewards being offered by the platform owner. And that's an interesting mechanism. So one useful case study of this was with Fanta. Okay, all of us have probably heard of Fanta, owned by Coca-Cola. And last year, so in 2024, Fanta launched a crowdsourcing campaign in Europe to identify what they wanted, a new product with a focus on creating disruptive innovation for teenagers. A very interesting case study. They wanted a product that promoted sensory pleasure in the form of a new and exciting taste experience. But very interestingly, they wanted to instill or encourage collective fun, meaning they wanted teenagers to experience this drink while having fun with their friends. And what they did was use an intra-co-creation approach. So internally, they started by looking at internal employees within design engineering processes to scrape or crowdsource internal ideas. They had 28 ideas come from the internal product development teams, but then they used an online crowdsourcing platform to engage designers from around the world, and they were able to identify a following 112 ideas. And from this, they were then able to identify on the right-hand side, you will see new experiences for Fanta. And this happened last year, so some of these ideas are not in fruition yet, they've not been developed yet, but some of these you may see on shelves in the future, where we have bottles with 2 straws, so people can experience drinking with friends, almost like the Lady and the Tramp scenario in the film. But we have bottles where you have the drinking cap at the top, but you actually drink from the bottom. So it's a fun experience and more engaging experiences. But the other thing that we need to think about is absorptive capacity. There is a huge amount, no doubt people in this room have written papers on absorptive capacity, the ability for a firm to acquire knowledge and use knowledge. And this is what social media capability, the key thing for that is the ability of the firm to absorb the knowledge. You can have, like Fanta, you can have all of these 100+ ideas, but if you've not got the mechanisms in place to be able to absorb it and transform it into new product ideas, there is a key challenge there. Okay? And we have exploitative learning. But does it work? Now, I know that we've got people from industry in this room, and we've got people from academia, so I'm not going to bore you too much with the theoretical side of this, but more from some of the key findings. And these are published in top journals, where we can see that from an internal point of view, if you look at intra co-creation, we see that studies have proven that the use of social media has a direct positive effect on product and process innovation in small enterprises. There is still lots of research to be done in different sizes of organizations, with different makeups of teams, with different organizational cultures from different regions, but that is a proven fact that we do have that ability. We also have a finding that innovation conditional on the use of this social media technology use has a positive effect on labour productivity. And this is an interesting one, because in large organisations we have an ageing workforce, and we have people who are resistant to using these type of technologies, but we can see that productivity is increasing due to the use of social media within the workplace. And then finding 3, we see that strategic social media use is associated through with new product development through the serial mediation of transformative and exploitative learning, meaning that companies are able to transform. Once they've absorbed that knowledge, they can transform it into actionable knowledge and then exploit it into new product ideas. And this is very important. So, the conclusion, the current research from the leading journals show that social technology use through the use of social media enables innovation in products and process and leadership innovation, and that leads to increased or improved new product development performance. But there is a crossroads, and I mentioned that earlier, that the crossroads is really thinking about the human-centered side of digital transformation. So we can embrace all of these different social technologies. You say, we've got the perfect solution. Do your analysis first. Understand, how do we structure our product? Do we go on a platform? Do we stand alone? Do we build alliances from a knowledge management point of view? Do we build alliances in terms of intellectual property, data sharing, knowledge sharing? And then, in terms of community, if we are going to engage in social product development and look at these new tools through crowdsourcing and different open innovation methods, how do we manage, how do we engage with our communities so that we get the best out of them? Alone. Okay. Now, as I've mentioned, I'll try to bring this together because we've got only a couple of minutes, but I'd like to share the future work. Okay? But we need to think about this from bringing it together harmoniously. So people working together interdisciplinary across teams. And we've had software as a service, but now we have anything as a service. And we need to be thinking about our new business models. So you cannot have a data-driven, personalized product strategy without platform-based product architecture. So think about it that way. Now, we also, before I get on to the future research, we also have to think about why people fail in this space. So from a social product development point of view, we have a framework of limiting factors. Now at the level 1, we have strategy, thinking about if you're going to engage with social product development, these different mechanisms for understanding your customers, your end users, their wants, desires. It may be because the company has an unclear vision, an unclear strategy, a poor business model fit, but it may also be strategic partners. So when it comes to the use of social media, we now have the ability to communicate and collaborate with people internationally to draw on the best types of knowledge possible. And then we have processes. So at the level 2, we have processes in terms of ineffective coordination, poor quality assurance, lack of technology or proper technology. And then at the community level, We have issues related to transparency and trust and fairness and failure to engage with people. So again, you can have all of these technologies, but the human-centered side is paramount. Now, there's various different future research directions, and I've only got a couple of slides, but the future research directions, we can think about this when we think about social product development. The first one being trust and deception. So how do we model and mitigate the impact of dishonest actors? So when we look at the crowdsourcing or social media use within product development, we have different actors who may wish to sabotage ideas for that product. They may wish to downvote potentially good ideas. We have the goals and motivations, so thinking about what drives high quality contribution on crowdsourcing platforms, and how can we prevent top performer or top contributor performance. We have a lot of contributors on these crowdsourcing platforms who are producing lots of unique ideas, but there is a burnout, and they're not getting paid a monetary value maybe. So how do we encourage them to continue their engagement? And then there's ethics by design. So how can we embed privacy, fairness, and ethics into the architecture of our products and the platforms, and then the culture of openness. And then we have thinking about what type of studies. We have the strategic and the economic element. So looking at longitudinal studies, okay, a lot of these studies in academia, we do short-term studies, but for a crowdsourcing or social product development study, it's important to look at what is the long-term performance of these projects. And then look at new business models, resilience, and SMEs and their engagement. I think from a social product development, there is a real need to do more research at that small, micro, macro level. A lot of this research is done in larger organizations predominantly. Okay. And then, let's go to the next slide. Just because of time. So, final takeaway from today. The digital transformation of product development is not about replacing human ingenuity with algorithms. And I now ask if you've got any questions. Okay, Gustavo.
Yeah. I wonder how do you balance between the social media co-creation of products and the circular economy aspects. So it seems to be different things. What people think is good and what we think is good for the planet.
From that process.